everybody. If I haven't met you yet, I'm Dan Reckla, and you are attending the Access program. This is not the program on how to win at the Florida lottery. That's 2 doors down. So sorry, but hopefully this will prove to be a winning topic anyway. If this is your first time attending one of our presentations, let me just tell you that much of what we've done is on My W Life. There's a little icon on the menu thing there that has some of our literature. It has the opening statement that actually we saw this for the first time about a year ago at our fall quarterly meeting when we first started this program. Today represents a full year of giving these programs. And you can see on that little handout that we had in the back of the table there some of the topics that we've had over the past year. I'm gratified at the number of people who've come to these sessions and who have, I hope, benefited from them. As it says on the paper there, we're getting ready to plan for next year. So I would encourage you, if you have any feedback for us, what went well, what needs to be improved or changed, please do tell us so that we can make it more useful for all of us. Having said that, this is actually the last program for this year, and we thought we'd do something different this year. For all those other topics, we've had speakers come and stand in front of us and talk about their role in helping people prepare for death or dying. And I realize that's not a topic that creates a huge grin on most people's faces, but it is the most inevitable topic we can have. And where better than a continuing care retirement community to offer information and support to people as we go through this process. So, having said that, this session will involve a panel of speakers that you see in front of you, and they are all people who in one way or another have some connection with us at the moment of death or as we die. You don't often hear from or see these folks. They're mostly over in the health center doing their job. But we thought it would be appropriate to let everybody know what goes on, what happens. It can be a challenging topic, but a very critical one, I think. So let's see if you agree. To start us off, as soon as I get my act together here, I'm going to introduce Marilyn Cameron. And Marilyn is the administrator for health services for Westminster Woods. And she, in turn, will introduce the rest of the members of the panel. Some of them I'm sure you've seen or know, but you'll know them all a little bit better when we're done. So, Marilyn, how long have you been with us, and where did you come from?
My name is Marilyn Cameron, and I'm the Health Services Administrator, and I've been here about 8 years. I originally came from New Jersey, and I am a licensed nursing home administrator. I hold a license in the state of New Jersey as well as in the state of Florida, and I work with a great team. And at Westminster Woods on Julington Creek, death happens in all levels of care. So we brought representatives from all levels of care here, and I wanted to introduce them. First and foremost, we have Robin White Lester. She's been here for about 14, almost 15 years, and she is our Director of Social Services in the Healthcare Center.
Okay.
So we are very happy to have Robin. We then have Elaine Simpson. Elaine's been with us just a bit under a year, and I've had the privilege of working with Elaine before in a previous lifetime. And Elaine is our assisted living coordinator, and she's also worked a considerable amount of her career in hospice care as well. Then we have Cynthia. Hello, Cynthia. And Cynthia is one of our health resource nurses, and she is the one that bothers everybody for updated health information, and she is a presence in the clinic as well as a presence on her golf cart. And she works more with our independent living residents. And then we have Susanna Moran, and Susanna is our business office manager. So we have a great valued colleagues that I work with. So.
Okay. Thank you, Marilyn. And we're going to find out more about what each of these panelists does as we move along. Just a couple of things to get us started with some ground rules. Number one, this is meant to be a presentation, not a problem-solving situation. So if there is a problem that someone has with one of the functions or what we're talking about, please feel free to approach the individual after the session. So this is for informational purposes. If you have a question that involves you personally, we have to be sensitive to the security of personal information. And so please hold any questions related to your personal situation until after the session, when again, the panelists will stick around. After we get through talking with the panelists, we'll open it up for comments or questions, and please feel free. Either catch them here or wait till after the session is over and catch them then. So, Marilyn, we talked about doing this in kind of a sequence. Would you like to talk about that sequence and who's going to be introduced first?
We'll introduce Cynthia first. Not because she's the best, but just because we're going to introduce independent living and what happens if someone dies in independent living or any of those type of subjects. So go ahead, Cynthia.
Hello. Okay.
You got it.
So, first of all, there's a couple different situations we have to deal with out there. One is a witness death where someone's called, we go, and the person expires while we're there. At that time, we follow our advance directives if we have them in your chart, hint, hint. And then we either start CPR and call rescue, or if you are a DNR, then we do not do that. We say, bless your heart, and call your family.
Cynthia, let me just jump in. I also mentioned on that handout that sometimes we're going to use acronyms or vocabulary that the normal person may not quite grasp. And I think most of us in here know what a DNR is, but it's a little sign that says do not resuscitate. And there will be more vocabulary words coming out as we go along. So bear with us. If we hit something you don't know, just let us know. Sorry, Cynthia, go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah, just raise your hand and go, hello, what does that mean? I'm sorry, I apologize. The second situation we deal with is an unwitnessed death where someone hasn't pushed their button in the morning or they haven't shown up for an appointment or, for various reasons we go and check on them. And they've already expired. Again, depending on their advance directives, we have a choice of two things to do. Start CPR, call rescue, or not, and notify their family members, the police, and rescue. Because with an unwitnessed death that's not expected, as in if someone's not on hospice, then we have to call the police and rescue to write up a report and pronounce, etc.
Okay.
Cynthia, just a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is hospice involved possibly in independent living?
There are some residents that are on hospice, and again, that would be an expected death if someone expires on hospice. So we would notify hospice and move on from there. We would not start CPR because 9 times out of 10, people do not resuscitate on hospice. If they are a resuscitation, then we again would start CPR and call hospice.
Okay. And our next speaker?
Our next speaker is Elaine Simpson.
Good afternoon. How are you guys doing?
All right.
Okay, so in assisted living, we kind of follow some of the same rules, but we are governed by ACA, who gives us our law and rule. And with that being said, you can have death and dying in assisted living, but we're also governed by the fire marshal, and I'll kind of explain that in a little bit. When you're in assisted living, you have people who, do pass away on hospice services, which is just an added, hands-on, or, people are unexpected, as is in an independent living. But the one big rule with the fire marshal is that you have to be able to, if in case there's a fire, they have to be able to walk out, because if they can't get out on their own, they can't be in assisted living. They have to kind of go to a higher level and meet, which is a nursing home. But you can get 24-hour sitters in there if you're able to do that. But otherwise, that is one of the things that we're governed by. You have to be able to get out in a fire. So some people, get the 24-hour sitters, or they go to the healthcare center, which they need a higher level of care.
Okay. Well,
And if it occurs, if a nurse goes in, can you kind of talk about a do not resuscitate order in the assisted living setting and how that works?
Sure. As Cynthia mentioned, I know a lot of people come from our independent. They're contracted, but we do some rentals as well. And we're big on do not resuscitate, or, some people want them, some people don't, but we definitely have to have those orders and know what you want. And Cora is my nurse, and she kind of helps me with those as well. With when you come in, you have to have an 1823, so everything has to be set. So if something happens in assisted living, say in ILEX, in our memory care, our med techs calls us and said, "Oh my gosh, somebody has stopped breathing." We go to our charts. We know ahead of time, but we always verify with our charts. We have to see if we do CPR or don't. We also call the ambulance company, so they can go to the hospital if necessary. So we follow a lot of the same rules, but we have to know because we have to react.
Then I'm going to move on to Robin.
Good afternoon.
good afternoon.
I'm Robin from the health center, which is the nursing home. When a person has exhausted their level of care and they can no longer function safely at home and caregivers are unable to provide care, they come to the nursing home. They're followed by an interdisciplinary team, which consists of a physician, therapy, nursing, dietary, myself, and activities. When a person is really demonstrating decline and is starting to show signs that they're not going to recover, hospice services are introduced. Sometimes the person is accepting of death and dying, and other times they are not. We work together as a team. I also work with them individually to do a life review, find out what death and dying means to them, what it looks like, but also we work with the family too. So it is a pretty unique experience.
One of the things that was coming out in these talks is regulations. You can't even die without being regulated somehow. But these folks obviously have to observe the rules, the regulations, and each of them has her own unique role in dealing with this topic. We're going to go into some of the topics about this, and this could last for 20 minutes, could last for an hour. I don't know. A lot of it depends on what you hear and what you want to hear more of. So, Cynthia, let me go back to you a little bit. When you get a call or you are told go to such and such a unit, what's the first thing you have to do? What's your protocol?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
When you walk through the door, what are you doing?
I'm assessing the resident.
Okay. And if you find a resident who is not breathing?
Again, we refer to the advanced directives. If they've got a do not resuscitate, we do not do anything but make them comfortable or look comfortable for the family and call the police and call rescue.
One thing that I wanted to let everybody know, in the state of Florida, a do not resuscitate order is a yellow form. Unless that yellow form is present with that person and is visible and can be seen, CPR will be provided. So an advanced directive is a guide to healthcare services that we utilize, but in the state of Florida, it is a yellow do not resuscitate. So in the event that Cynthia would go out and somebody has expired and there's a loved one there, let's say, and that loved one said, you know, they didn't want CPR. Cynthia is required to do CPR unless she sees a yellow do not resuscitate. That goes in all of our levels of care.
And there's one more person you need to introduce down at the end there.
I'm going to introduce Suzanne, because what happens after somebody passes or expires, and what happens financially, what about the estate, what about billing, so she can let you know a little bit more about that type of a situation.
Thanks, Marilyn. So first of all, I just want to give you a little heads up on paying through the continuum. If you have a need to move from independent living to assisted living, any days that are overlapping, you will be billed for both areas. So if you have not completely moved out of your villa or Magnolia, North Point into assisted living, until your keys are turned in for your independent living, you will be charged for that as well. A lot of people come to us and say, well, nobody told me. So now you know. When spouses move together from independent living into assisted living, and as part of the continuum towards death and dying, you need to know that there is a second person fee in assisted living. So if you're quoted, I'm just pulling a number out of a hat, if you're quoted $4,000, just know in advance that there's going to be another, I think it's about $1,000 to $1,200 more on top of that for the second person to live in assisted living. Moving on to planning ahead, our contracts have a space where you can indicate who your refund should be made out to. 99% of those contracts, folks have just checked myself or my estate. Well, quite honestly, not everybody's estate goes into probate. So if I write out a check, or if our corporate office sends a check to the estate of John Doe, and there is no probate case open for John Doe and no bank account that says estate of John Doe, those monies are going to wind up with the state of Florida in an unclaimed fund unless somebody can come forward and say, that's my money. So what I would ask each of you to do is to go back and look at your contracts and take a look and see how you want your refunds made out, if there is any refund. And that's not just for entrance fees. if today is November 12th and you've already paid your bill for November and something should happen tomorrow, you're going to get a refund. Who should that refund be made out to? Because if you're not here, it's not going to do any good to write a check out to you.
Okay.
One other thing that you all should know is that the business office is almost always the last to know that somebody has died. Part of the reason for that is because your health is HIPAA protected information. We have no reason to know that John Doe has congestive heart failure. There is no reason for the business office to know that information. So again, we are the last to know that somebody has died. There are family members who will come to us within 24 hours and say, my mom died at 6 o'clock this morning, when do I get my refund? And I look at them and say, oh, I am really sorry. Please accept my condolences. Who's your mom? And they get very upset because we don't know. Now, if you have an entrance fee refund coming, you will get back a minimum of 75% if it's within 1 year of when you moved in. 50% if it's 1 to 2 years of your contract date, and 0% after 2 years. Now that's different. The rules are very different if you move out, and we'll talk about that another time, or if you have a guaranteed refund option. Again, check your contract for whatever options you've chosen. The timeline for your refund is 90 to 120 days after death. I cannot request a refund from our corporate office unless I have a death certificate on file prior to making that request. The state of Florida says that we cannot close out your file without a copy of your death certificate. The refunds are issued via check, and they are payable to the party that is stated in your contract. If you have a balance or a refund due, that will be added or subtracted from any entrance fee refund that's coming back to you. Now, if we're past 4 years and you don't get any of your entrance fee back, then any refund will be paid out within 45 to 60 days. And I think that's it. And just a little tagline here to help us all out. If you have not turned in your Medicare card to either Cynthia or the business office, you know, the new cards with your new number that makes absolutely no sense to it, it's not your Social Security number, make sure that we get those before the end of November. Any services rendered in December are generally billed in January, and as of January 1st, Medicare will no longer accept that Social Security number. So if we don't have your new Medicare number on file, then you may wind up paying privately out of pocket for something that Medicare might have covered.
Dying ain't easy. I'd like to ask each of the panelists, and just go right down the row, what contact do you have with survivors or with loved ones? Because Suzanne kind of brought that up in her talk. But what contact do you have with the survivors of someone who dies here?
Generally in the healthcare center, we as a team know if somebody is not doing well. Regardless if they're on hospice or not. You do not have to be on hospice, okay? But, and we go all in and we offer the family, that's when the family can stay overnight. I get that question quite often. Can the family stay overnight? Yes. You know, in the end stages, we want the family to be together. We usually, in the health center, move somebody to a private room if they're not already in a private room, so they can have that private time to reflect with their loved ones and have family time together. We facilitate that. We all, as a team, usually go in and check. We provide a tray of nourishment for family members. So we all go in, and I'll allude to Robin next. But one thing I just wanted to ask the audience, because it's big in all of our levels of care. Do you have a funeral home picked out? Please do. It's a traumatic event. Your family members often don't know what to do. And in any level of care, if there's not a funeral home picked out, it's not something your loved one probably wants to do. So please make sure in any level of care that you choose your funeral home, that it's either with Cynthia, with Elaine, or with Robin, so we can provide the services that you want and alleviate that burden upon your family.
You know, what's interesting, we're starting to see an overlap between what they're saying and what some of our presenters have been saying all year long about different aspects of this. So it's gratifying to see that a lot of this is kind of coming together. But let's move on. I know, Robin, you deal pretty heavily with families, loved ones, survivors.
We do. Death is a very emotional time, not only for the person, obviously, but for the family as well. And post-death, lots of times families have a hard time with that transition. Sometimes they will contact me, which I will work with them and hospice to implement some bereavement. But that is a program that hospice does offer up to a year post-death. They offer individual counseling, group counseling. They'll even do it over the phone. So they really work with the families to provide that bereavement care.
How long after a person's death do you stay in touch with families?
Generally, after a person has died, we do contact the family. We do offer our condolences. We do touch bases with hospice. Hospice always is involved as well in the latter part of a person dying. So they do have contact with the family, and they are already registering them for the bereavement support. Lots of times, you know, in the beginning, families are just, they're so consumed with the trauma of death that they're just not even thinking that they're going to have any emotional despair after a person has died. So they don't access those services. But as time goes, they start to notice their change in their habits, changes in mood, and, you know, they are calling and talking about how the death has affected them. So at that time, that's when we really start to encourage them to do the bereavement support.
Okay.
Robin, what happens if somebody is not on hospice?
The same.
So hospice will still help them
We
through
would
the
do it.
bereavement?
We would do it ourselves, and we would work with them on an individual basis, either myself or the psychologist.
I will tell you that hospice providers do have certain programs for people who have had a loved one who has died, even if that loved one didn't die in hospice care, but it's a unique, specific kind of assistance. So yeah, there is always help. Plus, as you've just heard, we can have help here. And I think that's really important for people to know. You don't have to feel that you've been abandoned, if you will. Elaine, you deal with folks who are family members. That's the word I'm trying to get out. You deal with family members a lot. What about when a resident in your care is approaching death?
Absolutely. Before I go on to that, I just want to add on to the bereavement part.
Go ahead.
When they are on hospice, they also actually have a program for kids. A lot of people don't realize that service is out there. So they have Camp Healing Powers for those who have lost a grandparent, a parent, and they can relate to other children their ages. So I just wanted to kind of let people know that as well. But we get very close in assisted living with our family members. We're always reaching out to them, because a lot of times they live there for numerous years, 5, 10 years, because we're just, an added service because we're assisted living. So we get to really know the family members who come to visit every day. We give phone calls to all the families at least once a month in our memory care program. So we're always getting to know our family. So a lot of times when it comes to the end of life, they really want their other residents, some of the employees maybe to go to the funeral services. So we try to keep in touch with a lot of our family members afterwards. So in case they don't have hospice involved, but either way we keep in touch with them.
Okay.
The amount of involvement we have pre and post death really varies with the resident and with the resident's family. If it's an unwitnessed death, well, that was surprise. So that one's kind of rough on the families because they're not expecting that phone call from me. Usually it's a short-term situation as far as, assisting the family, speaking with the family, but directing them toward other services are available. But again, when someone on campus passes away, we are a big family, so the other residents and myself and the other health resource nurse many times will commiserate afterwards and just talk about the person and reminisce a little bit.
Okay. Suzanne, did you have anything to add to? Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to elaborate in Cynthia's case because Cynthia has multiple roles, and if you are living in independent living and you are the caregiver to somebody who is existing and living in independent living because you are the caregiver, if you are that caregiver, please have a plan. Cynthia has run into many situations where the caregiver has died before the one they're caring for. And there has not been pre-planning for the one they are caring for. And it's an emergent, for the family, what do we do now? So in Cynthia's case, she's always, when she recognizes a caregiver, do you have a plan? Do you have a plan for your loved one if it should be you? These are all hard questions, but they are occurrences that we've seen over and over again. So I just wanted to bring that question to the forefront as well. If you are that caregiver, what about you? And what if it was you?
I just wanted to add a note for our residents who live in assisted living and our nursing homes. We do celebrations of life because a lot of our residents, just like family members, grieve. And we need to help some of our residents and family members that go through with it because people get attached. They're our best friends. So we do celebrations of life as well in our assisted livings.
Okay, I'm going to throw you a hardball here. What's your biggest challenge in what you do relative to us dying?
Lack of communication between family members, talking about when the time comes. Death and dying is in the cards for all of us. And it's really a wise decision to have that communication with your family. What does death look like for you? What are your plans? Talk about it. It's, unfortunately in our society, the word death and dying is just not accepted. It's like something we just don't want to talk about, but it will happen one day. So it is something that we have to talk about. We have to have those conversations, and we have to make a plan and share it.
I'll ask the same question from everybody else. What's the biggest challenge or hassle that you face relative to our death or dying?
I can speak for some of the team members. For those who are possibly independent, what if I should pass away and I'm out in my golf cart or I'm in the dining room. The understanding that CPR will be provided because you don't have a yellow DNR with you at the time. So understanding that, just making sure everybody is educated. It's, again, a lot of people don't like the subject, as Robin said, but we will all reach that point in time in our lives, and we see it a lot. We see sometimes a family celebration in a room, or we see unexpected loss and things that weren't said that could have been said. So
Yeah.
just educate yourself. There's a lot of education out there.
Okay. Any other thoughts about your biggest challenge?
Making sure that you've picked somebody to speak on your behalf, because a lot of times families don't always agree with each other. So know that your husband or wife may not agree with your decision and go completely opposite. So just make sure that you have somebody that can, honor your wishes.
Which was the topic of one of our presentations, by the way, a program called Honoring Choices, where you have that conversation. So, okay. Anything else? Go ahead, Cynthia.
The Honoring Choices information is available through Robin and myself. So if you're interested, just contact either one of us and we can provide you with that information and start that conversation.
Okay. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Thanks, Dan. I think the biggest challenge in the business office when somebody dies is, again, their contract says that the check should be made out to them or their estate, and there is no probate. So please, please, please talk to your family. In order to change it to something else, we either need it in writing from you, or if it's after one of our residents has died, then it has to be a legal document that gives that person the authority to make a change and request it made out either to your son, your daughter, or to a trust account or whatever.
What are the challenges to you when you have a patient dying who doesn't have a family, significant others? What happens?
Generally, everybody here, and we're very lucky, does have a loved one, a friend, a significant other. Now, if it comes upon occasion that we do not, we have been involved in guardianship. We do not become guardians, but we advocate for the public guardianship, somebody who can make decisions on that person's behalf. So we have run into that into occasion. It is rare because there is usually a loved one name as a healthcare surrogate, healthcare power of attorney, durable power of attorney. The one thing I could make sure that you can let your loved ones know, we've run into situations, people have 6 children, 5 children, 10, and one is a financial power of attorney and one is a healthcare power of attorney. Making sure they know the difference and making sure that those who are assigned know the difference as well.
Anyone else want to speak to that about someone who may not have someone around? No?
Marilyn described is the standard. And I believe Westminster requires you to have a contact in your file.
Okay. Okay.
Upon the occasion is when that person passes or predeceases the other person, and there's just nobody left for that individual, and that's when we will step in and get involved.
Okay. Finally, if you haven't already said it, or if you want to emphasize it, what is the one thing you want us to take away from this presentation? What do you want us to know about you and what you do? Last chance.
Just know that we're here to support you. and your choices. And if you're not sure or you have questions, communicate. Let us know.
Death is individualistic. To each an individual, it means one thing to one person and another thing to another. It's also multicultural, and we recognize that as well. So again, communicate with your loved one, with your family, and communicate to us as well. We are bound by HIPAA not to disclose information. So it's not what you disclose to us is not going to be disclosed outside the office.
I just thought of something.
Well, go right ahead.
Make sure somebody has volunteered to take care of your puppy, your kitty, your bird. Okay? I can only have so much of a menagerie. But that's important too. You know, if something happens to you, who's going to take care of your four-legged or feathered or finned baby? Your fur babies, yeah. And remember, we can, give you information. We really can't give you advice.
Hold on. We're getting there. Just by the way, we talked about people who have hospice care. One of the programs that hospice has is a program called Pet Peace of Mind. And it is a program where a hospice patient who dies and has a pet, the pet is cared for by volunteers from hospice and is fostered out to someone. And all of these pets are medicated and cleaned and whatever you call it. Anyway, they're all good to go, and they're free. Much of what's been talked about in here is in this book, the Resident Handbook. And there are things in here about who makes decisions about what has to happen. I encourage you to read the stuff in here, and you'll see how well it ties in with what's going on there. Marilyn, go ahead.
No, I'm just giving a run. I'm a microphone runner.
Oh, okay. So again, if I may just caution you, if it's a personal question, we can't answer it. Please wait till after the session. But if anything informational that was said here is worth talking about, we have two folks with microphones, so put your hand up and they'll get to you. Wow. Okay.
Two questions for Elaine. One, you mentioned the Form 1823, but you didn't tell us what that was.
Sorry about that. 1823 is actually upon admission. It's a form that's required by the state that's filled out by a physician. It kind of says what medications you're on, what kind of needs you have, if you need assistance with showers, your ADLs, activities of daily living. So it just kind of is a care plan per se of what you will need in assisted living. When you go into a nursing home, a 3008 is required. And again, it's a form that's filled out by a physician upon coming into assisted living or a nursing home, or if there's a change of condition, then you fill one of those out again.
Thank you. My other question is, you mentioned that in order to be eligible to go into assisted living, you had to be able to walk to an exit. You also mentioned that you could have a 24-hour caregiver. You didn't say that if you have a 24-hour caregiver, you didn't have to be able to walk on your own. Is that the case?
They have to be able to get out on their own, because what if that caregiver goes out one day, maybe out for a lunch break and there's a fire. They really need to be able to get out on their own.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Elaborate on that, Mr. Hiller. If someone is exceeding our level of care in our assisted living, the only way they can stay in our assisted living regulatory-wise is with hospice care. Okay, and is with hospice, and that's for any level of care in assisted living. And we want people to age in place. So they can stay in assisted living with hospice services. However, hospice services, along with that, sometimes our family members think, oh, hospice is 24-hour care. It is not. Usually for hospice comes in once a week, the nurse comes in once a week, and a hospice aides maybe twice a week. If there's supplemental care that exceeds our level of care, that must be done and hired out by 24-hour caregivers.
Okay, well, I think
Thank
we
you,
have a
Marilyn.
bunch of questions here, so let's see if we can keep, go ahead.
Does the business office
Use the mic, please.
require an official copy of the death certificate, or will you accept a fax copy or a...
I can accept.
Use the microphone, please. Okay.
Yelling back and forth here. Hey, so we can accept either a Xerox copy, a fax copy, email, or an original. But I know originals are usually kind of pricey when you have to get 100 of them or 50 or, however many, I think most places 9. But, I can take a copy or email, fax, however you can get it to me, that works.
Okay, next. Over here.
I have a microphone, I guess that's my turn.
Oh, okay.
We have not mentioned at all the role of the chaplain. Does the chaplain play a role in all we've been talking about?
Yes, he does. We actually, right now, we're obviously missing Merlin. So we are using the hospice chaplain. And then if the person or family has their own chaplain, then they're welcome to come too. But yes, they do. Hospice does provide spiritual support. Generally, I believe a regulatory practice is once a month. But if they're needed more than that, or they want some spiritual guidance, then we certainly contact hospice to let them know.
And just one statement I wanted to make. Instead of a funeral home, some of us have a cremation society, like I have Neptune Society. So you wouldn't necessarily need a funeral home if you had an alternative.
But again,
I wanted to say, I forgot earlier when Cynthia was talking, but when a person comes to the health center, we actually rely very heavily on your file in the clinic. So if you ever wanted to add to that or just make sure the information is up to date, I would really encourage you to go communicate that to Cynthia, because we pull a lot of that information when you come to the health center.
so
Or assisted living.
whether it's a funeral home or a cremation society, at least make it known. I think that's the key.
I have a question for Cynthia or Marilyn. Where do you get a yellow DNR form, and once you filled it out, where do you keep it?
Okay, we have yellow DNR forms in the clinic, and you can come get one at any time that we're open, huh? Oh, and Robin has them too, and Elaine has them too, so they're all over the place. They have to be signed by the resident and their physician. When that's done, I keep a copy in the clinic, and you keep a copy on your refrigerator, or at least someplace visible, because we had a situation, not recently, it's been a while back, where a gentleman was a DNR, and we did not have it in his clinic chart. He expired, not in the home, but it was on campus. And his wife said, oh, well, I have it in a file somewhere. So we had to do CPR on the gentleman, despite the fact that he was a DNR, because we did not have documentation. So, yeah, this is really important, guys. I can't emphasize enough that little yellow form.
Okay.
Dan,
Sir.
on DNR, right over here, Dan.
Oh,
I'm
there you
sorry.
are.
DNR, you've got a DNR, you are called to the house or wherever, and the person, you're told that they have a DNR, but they don't have it physically there, is one thing. But what if they have it there, show it to you, but the spouse or loved one says they do want you to resuscitate? What is your position in that situation?
Very difficult. If
Seriously,
this- well,
we hear of things like that where then they resuscitate and they've had a DNR.
Is the spouse the healthcare surrogate?
A
I'm gonna
healthcare
go
surrogate is a specifically determined person who may make decisions on behalf of the patient if the patient can no longer express his or her wishes. So a healthcare surrogate is a very specific responsibility.
And again, we have to have that information. They can't just say, well, I'm the healthcare surrogate.
That person does not agree with the DNR, you're going to follow the surrogate's situation.
If they can't speak for themselves.
Next, who else has a question? Over there.
I have a question. For instance, I have a do not resuscitate in my living will. I have it in the power of attorney. Everything's set.
Nope.
Don't shake your head, no. You have
It has to be the yellow form in Florida. You can have it on every other form in the world. You can have it tattooed on your chest or wherever you want. It doesn't matter. We have to have, legally, we have to have that yellow form. Rescue will not honor those other documents either. The hospital won't honor those other documents.
Cynthia is giving you the law. This isn't a policy.
It's called an out-of-hospital DNR form, and it's specifically for the state of Florida. You must have an out-of-hospital DNR form. When you're in the hospital, they have different rules. You can just have a do not resuscitate order in the hospital. But when you are out of the hospital, for anybody to recognize a do not resuscitate order, it must be the yellow form. It must be the yellow do not resuscitate form.
We can't hear you. Please use your microphone.
Not immediately, but it's definitely imminent. The family or somebody has to go get a DR in our bracelet with the evidence of the living will and everything.
No, ma'am. I just want to make it very clear that if you want to make a decision, time to make a decision is now. A bracelet will not do it. It has to be the yellow DNR form. And we encourage everybody to make the decision for themselves. Oh, okay. Yes, ma'am. And it's available in the health resource.
On the bottom of the yellow form, there is a little section where you can cut it off and carry it in your wallet.
And
So
many
you
people
can-
have that.
Yes.
Like
look
in the
at
back.
We have
Oh.
visuals.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Vanna.
very good. I'm,
What a guy.
I'm
What a
not
guy.
that, but it probably needs to be.
I think we have a few more questions. There's one up here, one over here, so if we can. Right here.
The panels collectively list, each one of you asks for one or more directives from us. And my question would be, when are you going to generate out the forms for us to be able to do it? Because it's so piecemeal, none of us will do it. Unless we had a tape recording today or took copious notes, we aren't going to have it either. Does that have everything you people have said today?
This has everything except the yellow DNR. The yellow DNR is available, okay, but this, and Cynthia,
And
Elaine, and Robin have all gone through the training to help
Certified.
facilitate. Yes, I know. They've all gone through the certified training to help people fill these out, okay?
And just to kind of go back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, this has been a topic in one of our Access Program presentations. And by the sound of things, it'll be a topic this coming year as well. But that's okay, you know. I'll just throw things around here. Okay, someone else had a question. Yeah, Cookie.
This may well be in the resident's handbook, but it's been a while since I read it. I'm by myself, and I recently updated my will. But should I die unexpectedly at home or whatever, you would have to call my niece, which you would do, But where does she begin
Oh, good
with
question.
the community, with, I don't know if it's the admin office or whomever? I mean, she's got to know how to get started.
Great question.
Does your niece know, and this is just coming from my heart, who your crematorium is and who your funeral home is? Has those discussions already been made? Because those are discussions, again, everybody's an individual in here and everybody has a different story. So I would encourage you to discuss your story with that person, because then it's all going to be, you know, where the process that Cynthia said, Elaine said, or Robin said, depending upon level of care, and then contacting the business office. Did that help?
Before we get too far along, I want to mention that there's a pamphlet back there on the table. Ah, well, apparently there are more, because Pam is waving her arm back there and says we have more, but it's called The Next Step. One of the little items of business after someone dies is, what do we do with their stuff? So you might want to take this and read it, and it has a lot of good information. Is there another question? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was similar to the last one in a different way. If someone is single at the time and has been in independent living, not really ill, how soon will family, the emergency contact, be notified by the company?
Immediately. Soon as I find you.
A message will be left. If there's a machine, we will not leave a message. We will say, would you please call back immediately? And unfortunately, our nursing staff, our social workers do that a lot. So I give them a lot of credit. They're very compassionate, because that is one of their jobs that they must do. And they do it in a very graceful way.
We have time for one or two more questions, or if you want to talk to an individual panelist, please stick around. I'm sure they'll be happy to talk with you. Again, I'm going to make a public service announcement. Next year, we are now starting to plan for our access programs for next year. If you have a suggestion for someone you want to see come back, or if you have a topic that you think we didn't discuss enough or we want to review, please let us know. Pam is there, Dwight is there, I'm here. And if you tell one of us, chances are pretty good we'll put it on our planning agenda. And I see another question.
I understand many of these access programs are in the library or online. Are
Yes.
they all?
No, unfortunately, we weren't able to capture every single speaker, but if golly, I guess we have maybe 3 or 4 of our speakers, something like that. We have the funeral planner, we have our elder law attorney, we had a hospice speaker, and I forget what else, but many of our talks are on video on My W Life, yes.
We have one last question.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about hospice. Is hospice paid for by us? Is it free?
No one, well, typically people who get hospice care are either, medical care is provided by their insurance or by Medicare. I will tell you one of the guiding principles of hospice: no one is ever refused hospice care because of a lack of ability to pay.
Medicare A or their insurance usually picks up the hospice care.
Thank you so much for hanging around. If you would like to talk to one of the panelists or several of them, I'm sure you can capture them before they escape. Oh, we still have more questions. All right, one more.
I'm just curious, and this is probably in your handbook, but what services are provided in assisted living and what require outside provisions? Is there, what type of services are not provided? Are in there?
If you don't have this, you need to get it, because there's all kinds of
Yeah.
information in here.
Elaine and I can be available in regards to any discussion about assisted living.
Okay, thank you all so much. We appreciate it.